pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for December 5th, 2017. It's MLS Cup week here on Soccer Today. And to start it off, Terry Dunfield from TSN, former TFC player. Terry, good morning.
Thanks for having me on, Kev. What's up, Duane?
Not much, Terry. Exciting week here in Toronto. Obviously, MLS Cup second year in a row. I guess we'll start with this and TFC's form over the playoffs. They've struggled to find the back of the goal. Seattle, meanwhile, rolling quite easily through the western side. Is there something to be concerned with there with the lack of production in the last few weeks?
Maybe a little bit. I think you need to look at both ties against New York and Columbus individually. I think the New York Red Bulls spoilt the way TFC played, and it was all about sort of doing whatever it took to get over the line. And then in the Columbus series, without Giovinco and Altidore in the first game, TFC went into Columbus with a real defensive mindset, and the first objective was to not concede, and they did that. And then I thought last week at BMO, you've got to give a lot of credit to Columbus. They came here. To be fair, I thought in the first 20 minutes, passed TFC off the park to the point where Greg Vanney had to make a change, and it was just a bit of brilliance really from Giovinco, Altidore, and Vasquez to create that goal, and then TFC were able to get over the line. For Seattle, I feel like they have had an easier path. I thought Vancouver were disappointing in the first leg. They cruised it at home, and I wouldn't gauge the Seattle team by the marker Houston put up. Houston were chasing the tide literally from the first half and were wide open, and Seattle cut them to shreds with their pace, and they were so good in transition.
Earlier this week, or a couple days ago, Greg Vanney was on record saying that sort of playing a bit of mind games, I think, saying Seattle didn't have to go through the same war as TFC. Is there something to that? Something to the battle-tested kind of philosophy that he's putting out there that might make TFC a little ready to get in the trenches on Saturday?
I think we saw another side to TFC, a side that we hadn't seen in the league so far this year. It's been open, entertaining, real attacking football, and maybe we would have seen that if Vasquez scores that penalty and Columbus need to open up a little bit. But I think that's a credit to the squad, and I think TFC are going to need a little bit more against Seattle, especially going forward, and a little bit more production from Giovinco, in my opinion.
When we're looking at big games, Terry, often we think about the big stars and trying to rise up to the occasion. On each side, we have some big stars: Dempsey, Lodero, Rodriguez, and you go Toronto, you have Giovinco, Josie, and Bradley and Vasquez. Do the DP match each other? Is it going to be depth players that will make the difference on that game because the stars are maybe equal on each side?
Good point. Good question. I think both teams' mindset and why they've been so successul, not only this year but last year, is it's been sort of a collective performance, and then within the sort of team shape, the individuals are flourishing. And look, both teams have improved this year. TFC have brought in Vasquez, Mavinga. They're a lot deeper this year and have more weapons. And I think Seattle has done the same. Players like that you mentioned, Rodriguez, Will Bruin up top, Clint Dempsey, he'll be available this year. So a lot more attacking flair. So I don't expect Seattle to come in and have the tactics they had last year where they parked the bus. I expect them to open up at times and really try to score, which should make for a more entertaining game.
Now, a topic of discussion that will go through the entire week, I imagine, is the status of health of Josie Altidore following his injury to a foot, probably during the second leg of the Eastern Conference Final. What is Josie's status, and how ready will he be, in your opinion, as of today?
It's an interesting one, and it's definitely one that you should follow closely. At the moment, as far as I'm aware, he's been wrapped in cotton wool a little bit. He's icing it, and it's a big decision for Greg Vanney. He said in his interview after Altidore that regardless of the state of where his ankle's at, he's going to play. And now it's in the managers and the physios and sport and science team's hands. Is just how do you handle him best? Do you start him from the beginning at sort of maybe 70-80%, or do you bring him on to sort of see the tie off. For me, if he's ready to go, you've got to play him right from the start.
We're going to see two teams match up on Saturday that both like to possess the ball, both like to try and create and force the issue themselves. So I'm wondering, Terry, what you think tactically both these teams will approach it. Does Toronto just throw out that same sort of formation they've been using all year to great success, or do they tweak it? Does Seattle sit back like they did last year? What are your thoughts on the tactical decisions that will be made?
Yeah, it's a real interesting one. And I'm not just saying that. I think that Greg is sort of diamond has sort of got them to the final through the playoffs this year, but their excellent form and record season was on the back of that 3-5-2 system. Playing a diamond against Seattle might not be the best way to go because it's difficult to stop fullbacks getting forward, and Seattle have two very good fullbacks in Liam and Anu. So I'd be surprised if he went with a diamond. I think he'll probably start with the tried and tested 3-5-2 system. Seattle will probably play 4-4-1-1. I won't expect them to be as open as what they were in their last series against Houston, where Ladero played in the midfield with Rodan. I expect them to be a little bit more compact. Maybe Svensson and Alonso, depending on his injury, will come in to partner Rodan. Ladero might go out to the right. So you'll sort of see two banks of four with Dempsey playing off of Will Bruin up top. And I think TFC will try to exploit Seattle in between the lines and try to shift those two center halves that are so good in Torres and Marshall.
I want you to put your former player hat on for a moment here. And I'm curious.
It's always on.
Fair enough. I'd be wearing it too if I could. But I'm curious what your perspective is as a player who's played in cold weather before, what the cold weather will do. And it's supposed to be below zero. There might even be snow on Saturday. What does that type of weather do to the players? Is there any change to how you approach the game? Just how does it affect the game?
I don't think it'll affect the players at all. I don't think it'll affect the pitch, which is most important. The sort of weather that players don't like is either a ton of rain where it holds on the pitch and it puddles, and I don't think that'll be the case, or if it's super windy and looking at the forecast, it just looks like it'll be close to zero, nowhere near what it was last year, but I don't think it'll affect either side.
You mentioned last year, Terry. Can you put it in perspective now? I know it's hard to see the forest when we're right next to a tree like right now, but back-to-back MLS Cup in Toronto, TFC there with favorites, or at least with a good shot. Will we look at this in a few years by being the pinnacle, the highest you can achieve as a club, or is it just starting?
It's somewhere in the middle, I think. I think it's been an incredible season on the back of just using what happened in the final last year as motivation to go out and win the league like they did. I think in the media, in North America, winning the league it doesn't have the importance that it should. So I think TFC made huge strides in that aspect. I think if you look at the ages of the core group of players on this team, that this team could be together for years to come. So I'm not sort of worried that this is an aging team and that this team is going to be blown up this year. Yeah, it'll be tricky to continue to keep everybody under the cap because players are going to want to be rewarded on the back of a good season. But there's still more to go out and conquer, and I think if TFC can touch wood, lift the cup, then their next sort of goal, I guess, would be can you become the LA Galaxy and do it 3-4 years in a row, and can you go out and compete against the top Mexican teams in the CONCACAF Champions League?
One topic of discussion that I think it's unfortunate, but we always rely on it, is to talk about where soccer is compared to other sports and cities and everything. You have a very interesting perspective, in my opinion, having played in this city, in this team, at a different time. How is it different now? Do you get talked about TFC way more than just a few years ago? How is it in the market right now?
Interesting question. Everyone keeps saying, Terry, this team is so much better. It is, and I don't know really how to take that. But
no offense, by the way.
But no, it's okay. Your backstroke was too late. I think when I came to Toronto, and everybody sort of around the league 3-4 years ago knew that it was just a matter of time before this market blew up, and they were. I think it'd taken a little bit of time for the right players to come in, and I think the team really set its stall off at bringing and signing Michael Bradley, that winning mentality, and I think just building the team around him is what they've done. I think off the pitch, there's the right complement of people from Larry Tannenbaum and Bill Manning right at the top to the GM, Tim Bezbatchenko. The coaching staff is different gravy. They really understand and know the league. And there's an academy sort of running alongside that to hopefully find the best sort of players in Canada to hopefully have more young Canadian players in the team. So I think sort of all of the pieces now have lined up nicely. And don't forget, you've got quality DPs, supplementary, it's not even supplementary, players like Vasquez, Mavinga, and then seasoned vets. There's a nice blend in the squad. Your Drew Moores and Zavaletas, Morrow, Betashore, players that really know this league.
Let's turn the page a little bit on the MLS Cup final. We look forward to that, obviously, Saturday at 4 p.m. Terry, also part of TSN's Champions League coverage and Premier League coverage. I want to ask you a question about a club near and dear to your heart and mine, Manchester City. Are they going to lose ever?
Gee, I'll be honest. The right team won against West Ham, but I was a little bit nervous, and I thought it was just going to be one of those days. And they bumped into a housekeeper, and West Ham were defending for their lives, and they were almost galvanized to try to beat that club that takes points off of Man City. A little bit like the goalkeeper scoring against AC Milan on the weekend at the death. But I mean, hopefully, I think the only thing that derails City at the moment is a ton of injuries, and it'll be difficult to navigate through the difficult sort of winter fixture list as well, where there's so many games over Christmas.
Yeah, well, the derby this weekend is going to make for an interesting emotional experience for myself. Let's turn attention to the Champions League in general. PSG has obviously been running rampant through all the competitions this year. Are we right to consider them the favorite at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think you've still, for me, in my opinion, I think it's teams that have been there and done it and know what it's like to get through big semifinals and playing finals. So I still think your Barcelona, your Real Madrids, and Bayern Munich are your top teams.
All right, Terry. Quick prediction on the weekend for Saturday. Well, we'll get you both games, Saturday and Sunday. How do they play out?
Oh, I think TFC just have too much for Seattle. If I'm honest, I think there's just too much quality in their squad. I hope they go with the 3-5-2 system and really just go out there and enjoy. A little bit like what Columbus did to TFC in that first 20 minutes. Just go out there, enjoy your football, move that ball quickly, shift those two big center backs, and all the players, is all the talk. They wanted that chance at redemption. They've got it now, so it's up to them to go out and take it. So I'm going to say 2-0, man. It's 2-0 TFC, and then I think I was reading this morning that Silva might be an injury dealt for the derby. That's not great, but I think missing Paul Pogba is a huge blow for Man United. So I think a draw probably. I think either a draw or a 1-0 City nick a goal.
The draw is always a good bet in the derby, and it'll be a stressful day. But hopefully some joy from the day before. Terry Dunfield, TSN, thanks for taking some time today.
Cheers, guys. Have a good day. Bye.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Duane Rollins with myself, Kevin Laramee. We've touched on the Champions League, but Duane, let's just finish on the MLS Cup before we move on. I don't know if it's just because it's the second year in a row, but last year I didn't feel the excitement until maybe the Thursday. Maybe that's because that's when I was traveling and got to Toronto and everything. But it was different timing and everything. But like I feel excited already, and it's not my club. Not at all. Quite the opposite, but I don't know. Is it just me?
I think there is a in Toronto, I think the hardcore fans are a little nervous at this point too, because it's so close, but yet there's still so much work to do. But yeah, there certainly is a buzz in the city about this club and having another championship game. And don't laugh, soccer fans. The fact that the Argos won the Grey Cup a couple of weeks ago has sort of created a bit of buzz too. And that sort of idea of Toronto momentum moving forward and to bring another title back to the city is, I think, something that's galvanizing sports fans, even though they don't usually show up for Argos games, but they watch the Grey Cup. So there you go.
Yeah, no, it is interesting, and the status of Josie Altidore will be one thing that we watch all week. And we've talked. One thing we didn't talk about with Terry Dunfield is the clash of the managers, because both have great pieces and both won games in those playoffs with great decisions on either their part or had to adjust. If we're looking at Columbus, the first game, Greg Vanney had to adjust very quickly in the first half to make sure he didn't concede a goal, and moving forward able to stay solid defensively. So I do feel that this game could actually turn out to be Schmetzer versus Vanney.
Yeah, there are some people out there that question Vanney's the choice of Vanney for manager of the year. I am not one of them. I think that he gets underrated in terms of his ability to make tactical switches during the game. That's something he's improved on a great deal over the past 3 years, and certainly you saw it in the Columbus series, and you saw it against New York a little too. It's going to be key, and I'm curious to see. The tactical question I asked Terry is a genuine interest of mine this week, because I think teams have sort of scouted that 5-man back or 3-man back, however you want to call it, a lot, and they're able to find some weaknesses in it and take advantage of that. And we saw that, I think, during the stretch run when TFC was allowing more goals than we had been used to seeing this year, and they've made some adjustments defensively, clearly, but I think that it's going to be there's going to have to be very quick decisions if Seattle is able to take advantage of that, or if they get on the back foot off the top. That said, you do want to get out there and get on the front foot if you're TFC, and the memory of last year is going to be in the back of most people's minds, the fans' minds anyway. And the longer it goes without a goal, the more stress and the more nervous energy that will be in that stadium. And there is something to that when there's frustration builds and the crowd's not getting behind you in the same way before. I mean, these are professional athletes that should be able to overcome that. But certainly, I think you would expect TFC to try and get in the front foot. But again, you mentioned the manager battle. Like, how does Seattle respond? Do they try and sort of catch TFC off guard and go more attacking themselves? Because it is a way that they like to play. I think that if you sit back like they did last year, that I don't think it will work a second year in a row. I just don't think that's replicable. You're not going to have the type of saves that Fry made. The luck's going to go a different way if you try and play with fire too many times, I think.
So are you saying we're not going to see a save in like the 87th minute from Fry jumping and stopping a ball behind him in like extra time or something? You're saying we're not going to replicate this year?
No. Well, you never know, but certainly that will be Fry will be motivated again. Well, they all will be motivated. I mean, Seattle's a good team, and they did win they got it done last year, not the prettiest way. And we make fun of that a little bit up here.
Will we have a goal this year? That's the question. Will we have a shot on net or a goal on each side during play?
I do actually think so, because I do believe, and actually I'm going to go so far as to say that we're going to have both teams are going to score in this game.
Oh wow!
I think it's going to be a little more of an open game than we saw. Than we've seen other championship games, and certainly than we saw last year, because Seattle feels that they're better than they were last year and will want to play a little bit more progressively, I think. I made a bold prediction to a friend on the weekend that I'm not going to repeat here, but I think that I do think TFC has enough, and I'm going to go with a 3-1. That's my early week prediction right now for TFC. I believe Seattle probably narrows it to 2-1 at one point after a 2-0 lead, and then a late goal when they're opened up to try and get it. We'll seal it, and the celebration will begin in Liberty Village, and it's going to be an interesting night at that point.
Yeah, interesting few days probably. But it's hard not to compare from last year with this year, right? Right next to me, I know you don't see the video, but I have the scarf. Like, it's the right colors. It's red and it's green. It's last year's scarf, but it's just off by one day. It says December 10th on it. Just slash it, put a line, and it's working. It's hard not to compare year to year for me. And when I'm looking at Seattle and Toronto, the two biggest things that I'm thinking right now, when I'm comparing not necessarily this season, but just the matchup between the two of them over the last few games. They played once this year. Toronto is the only team to beat Seattle at home. And they played last year in MLS Cup. So that's the last two games they played against each other. What are the biggest difference? last year in the MLS Cup? Well, Dempsey wasn't playing on one side, and there was no Rodriguez. Correct? And on the other side, well, no Vasquez for Toronto, and no Mavinga, and a few other key depth pieces as well. Sorry to call players pieces, but you all know what I mean. So that's the biggest difference in those two teams in the direct matchups. And it kind of equals itself pretty much. So turns out who's the hottest, who's on form. Unfortunately, Toronto had an amazing season, but I cannot necessarily commit in saying that they struggle. I think opposition was a little better than we anticipated in the last few games that Toronto did play. And yeah, they went through wars. And I think that maybe, you know what they say, if you practice hard, I think there is maybe something to what Greg Vanney mentioned, right? If you practice hard, it's a little bit easier on game day. Let's use the playoff as the practice in that analogy and the final as game day. Maybe Toronto will be a little bit better prepared. I don't know.
Yeah, look, it's hard to really handicap Seattle because I do think the West was particularly weak this year. And we talked about Vancouver a lot, and I don't think that they were much of a match, and they probably performed above their level to get the points total that they did, in my opinion. I'm well on record for that one. And obviously the Houston series was a weird one in the sense that Houston was on 10 men in 2 games, and they were an underdog to begin with. So I just don't know how to look at Seattle's results in the playoffs. Obviously, you give them credit for beating who was in front of them. But, that said, how good is that opposition really? Now, the other side of the Seattle situation is the fact that they haven't allowed a goal since last year's Western Conference Final in the playoffs. And that's something that they're quite rightly proud of, and that's going to be a challenge for Toronto. But again, I come down and we talk about last year in comparisons to last year, and we all talk about the save Fry made, but not enough people talk about that close miss in the 3rd minute that Josie had. It flashed the post. That goes in. It's a different game. And I do believe that is the key to this one, as I said a moment ago, is to get out on the front foot and get a goal in the first 20 minutes of that game. That's going to settle everyone's nerves, and I think that if that happens, I'm confident that they'll finish it out. Seattle can win this game. They clearly can. But, TFC, 69 points, Supporters Shield, Canadian Championship, they're the favorite for a reason. And you can say what you want about the fact that they haven't been winning pretty in the playoffs, but they've been winning. They've gotten through. So yeah. That's the key here.
Yeah, you're right. Let's take a very quick break and come back and do some Champions League talk.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
Match day 6. Last one before the holiday break and the knockout stage when it comes back next winter, kind of spring. But let's just start with Group A and move downwards. And right now in the standings, Duane, Manchester United is on top of Group A with 12 points. FC Basel from Switzerland with 9. CSKA Moscow third with 9 points as well. And today in that matchup, you do have... let me just get them right in front of me. Benfica Basel and Manchester United CSKA Moscow. Is there any chance that Moscow can pull through? And Basel, Benfica, it's kind of underwhelming that Benfica might finish last in the group.
Yeah, certainly not a great year for the Portuguese teams. But is there a chance if the ball's round, right? There's a chance, obviously. But I think that you'd have to favor Basel in this setup to get that second spot and United to finish the job and go top of the group. And that continues to be a great story of this Champions League. If you're a fan of the English league, we've talked about them having down seasons in the Champions League, quite a bit in recent years. And certainly, that said, it's going to matter when we get to the knockout stages when the true cream rises. But so far, so good. If you're a fan of English teams, they're all playing very well in their groups right now, and an opportunity for them to boost that coefficient that they were concerned about. I think it's going to be fine now, and good for them there. But United will probably get the job done today, and I think you have to favor Basel over Benfica, just the way Benfica's played in this competition.
5 losses. 5 losses in the Champions League group stage. That's kind of mind-boggling. Group B, PSG. Yeah, Terry Dunfield might not think that PSG is the favorite so far, but in this group, 5 wins, 0 draw, 0 losses, 24 goals for, 1 goal against. But toughest task might be even not necessarily toughest task, but today they are playing Bayern Munich in Germany. It's not an easy game. Can they finish this group stage with six victories?
Yeah, well, and they haven't officially clinched the group, but I don't think Bayern's going to win by 20 goals. So
plus 23, they're the differential. It's
yes,
insane.
They'd have to overturn a what's that 17 goal differential on the day, but so that doesn't seem likely. Anyway, I guess it'll be 8-0 would do that. No, 9-0.
Yeah,
all right,
and that's not happening. Yeah.
I think they're a proud team, right? And they're going to look at this as an opportunity to put a measure down. They're going to finish second. They're going to have a tough touch in the knockout stage, but they will want to prove something to pay up PSG and sort of say, just kind of what Terry said there. That's just settle down there, son, so to speak. The old boys still know how to get it done, and that's going to be an intriguing game.
Celtic, Anderlecht as well, but this group looks pretty much certain that PSG moves on, Bayern Munich moves on. And,
they're clinched for sure. It's a big deal for Celtic to get that European spot, though, so don't discount that.
That's true, and they're for sure going to Europa League because, Anderlecht, the Celtic should win at home against Anderlecht. Let's just put it this way. Group C, quickly, Chelsea, Roma, Madrid, and Qarabag. Chelsea, 10 points, Roma, 8, Madrid, 6, Madrid, Atletico. Going to the Europa League, very, very likely, depending on today's result. But you do have Chelsea, Madrid. It's a rematch. Chelsea had difficulty against Madrid earlier this season. In this group stage, now at home against Madrid, and Roma at home against Qarabag. Yes, Qarabag have been maybe better than anticipated. I wouldn't go as far as saying surprising, but better than anticipated. But Roma at home against Qarabag, it probably won't be too beautiful to watch. It might turn out to be quite ugly, especially in favor of Roma. But I do feel Chelsea should get it done at home against Atletico.
Yeah, Atleti has a big thing. Atleti is unlikely to get the knockout stage. You would need a couple upsets there for that to happen. And that's, sort of as we said, they're having a bit of a down year compared to their last few. And when you play the way that they do, I think that it's only natural that there would be a bit of a letdown. They're going to have to turn that roster over a little bit, and I think they're probably losing something with the move away from the Calderon. It doesn't feel like home for them yet, kind of like the Spurs factor. So that's a group that's kind of been a bit underwhelming this year, but the season so far, as you say, Chelsea all to win. They win and they're through as the top, and you really want to avoid that second seed at all possible.
Yeah, because it could be Madrid, it could be Bayern Munich, it could be a difficult one with the teams that are in the second position of the group so far. Barcelona, Juventus, Sporting Lisbon, and Olympiacos. 11 points for Barcelona, 8 for Juventus, 7 for Sporting, and Olympiacos only with 1 with a single draw in fourth position. This is quite interesting today, Duane. Those matchup. You do have Barcelona versus Lisbon. It's always a game, especially if you go back in the 90s. This was almost a derby. But Barcelona, Sporting Lisbon will be interesting. Olympiacos at home against Juventus. Yeah, I do feel Barcelona and Juventus are the favorites today.
No, for sure. I mean, there is the possibility of Juve going out at the group stage, which would be quite an upset there for sure. But the idea of them not getting.
Can you imagine being an Italian fan? Like you're a soccer fan, you're a Calcio fan from Turin. Your national team's not going to the World Cup, and now you might go in like the Europa League. What's going on?
Yeah, certainly a bit of a strange turn of events there. But look, as I said, Barca's been actually quietly pretty good. It's funny that because of the sort of the chaos around them at the start of the year and the off the field stuff, I think a lot of people are sort of they're just not paying attention to Barcelona as much. It's like ho hum, they're winning, but they're certainly one of the favorites to win this competition. Let's not kid ourselves.
Talked about England's team, Liverpool, first of the group, heading into match day 6. Who would have thought? What is this? 2000 something? Are we in Istanbul, Duane, or something?
They still haven't got the job done, but
I know I'm exaggerating.
It's remarkable. It's the first time they will made the knockout stage since 2009, and that's just that's surreal to wrap your head around that they haven't been in the knockout stage this decade because they were such a fixture for so long.
Yeah,
but certainly
on 9
they
points.
should.
Sevilla with 8.
An easy touch tough group, but anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll see how those games span out today, but you do have Maribor, Sevilla, Liverpool, Spartak, Moscow. At Anfield, Liverpool should be able to get the job done today. And that would make Liverpool winner of their group and heading into the knockout stage. And for Liverpool fans, like you mentioned, it's been a while.
Yeah, those games, of course, tomorrow. But the bottom half of the group. Look, it's an interesting one for me too. The City, if you want to keep going through the groups quickly here, City's group, they have clinched first place in the group stage. So how do they approach a midweek game? Against with the derby coming up, I think you're probably going to see a heavily rotated squad there. But how important is maintaining the perfect record this year to their psyche? I don't know. You don't want to go into the derby off a loss. It'll be an interesting test of City's depth tomorrow in that contest as they likely look ahead for what is annually one of their biggest games.
Yeah, and then just moving on to Group G as well quickly. This has been a topsy-turvy group. If I would have told you just a few months ago, let's just put it this way, before the transfer window closed, that Leipzig and Monaco would not finish top two of this group, you would have said, hey, Kevin, you're kind of crazy. Besiktas first and clinched already the knockout phase place. FC Porto second, Leipzig third, and Monaco going home in the knockout stage, in the group stage, sorry. That's surprising, defending champion of League One.
It was a beautiful dream while it lasted, the Monaco dream there. But yeah, there's so much overturn that it was hard to see them once those players were leaving. You kind of saw the writing on the wall. Leipzig still with a chance in there, obviously, to get through, tied on 7 right now with Porto. But Besiktas, not just for the Timo Hutchinson story, is a nice sort of the surprise team in this Champions League this year. And it's nice to have a little bit of new blood in there.
They say last Besiktas game in the Champions League, Duane, Atiba Hutchinson was the captain, not just a player. He was wearing the armband in the Champions League.
First time a Canadian captained a team in the Champions League, yes.
Exactly. So we didn't talk about it, but it's quite a moment.
For sure. And look, I'm glad, as I've said many times, that Atiba is getting a little bit of attention on the broadcast and Besiktas is getting shown in these games, and they're talking him up because he deserves some recognition in this country. Probably, as I've argued before, the best Canadian team sport player that no one knows, right? I shouldn't say no one, but that's
not no one, but
underrated greatly.
Yeah, exactly. In the last group tomorrow as well, Tottenham Hotspur, Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, and Apoel. Quite a group as well. This and Borussia Dortmund looks like, well, for sure going to Europa League. Well, actually, they could be eliminated. Yes, there would need to be some upsets tomorrow, but if like at Wembley they're playing against Apoel. The winner moves. If Apoel beats Tottenham, Apoel moves on to the Europa League. If Tottenham wins at home, which is very highly likely, nothing really changes here. But Borussia Dortmund's on the road in Madrid at the Bernabeu. Real Madrid wins. They're just going to finish second of the group probably. And Borussia Dortmund just might go to Europa League. Or worse, if they lose, they might be going home.
I think most of the first place teams are going to be cheering pretty hard for Real Madrid to overtake Spurs in that group there, so they avoid the possibility of getting them in the draw.
Yeah. Well, you don't necessarily want Spurs either. The way Spurs have been playing.
Well, if you're an English team, you can't get Spurs though in the round of 16.
Okay, so you're talking with your City hat on.
Yeah, well, yeah, as I said, the English teams too. But if you're a Liverpool fan, you'd be saying the same thing. I don't. It's always a question for me: is like, do you want to avoid the big teams, or do you want to play them? Because that's what the Champions League is all about. I'd kind of rather play them in the quarterfinals on, though, not in the round of 16. Thank you very much, because that's a little early to be going out. And I just like Terry. I am going to not consider Real Madrid the favorite in this competition when I see them eliminated, and not a second before.
Yeah, it kind of does make sense. All right. We're ready. A lot of soccer to watch, a lot of things to dissect this week. It's the first day of MLS Cup week here, Duane. It's going to continue all week long with special guests, special analysis, conditions of Jose Altidore, updates all week long. Anything else, Duane?
Just as the week gets on, we'll see what we can do to get some sound from the press events, and there obviously we didn't talk about the U.S. presidential election stuff today either. That maybe
the United States Soccer Federation, yes, not necessarily presidential nothing to do with Mr. President Donald Trump, but more of Sunil Gulati not going for re-election. So that is interesting as well. And the announcement of this week during MLS Cup week, maybe trying to bury that news just a little further. And he is allegedly or apparently giving his support to Soccer United Marketing's CEO right now. I forget her name off the top of my head, but she might be willing to run for a USSF election, and she could have the support of Sunil Gulati.
I believe she did actually announce her candidacy this morning.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I don't pretend to have as much, but certainly there's a lot of politics going on right now, and there's a lot of anger in the U.S. soccer community. So there's resistance towards some woman, and I don't have her name in front of me either right now, but sort of that there's sort of the new blood idea out there that having someone come in from some might not be what they want right now. So
yeah, it might not be that type of new blood. It's not necessarily anything new. It's just, well, the message wouldn't be necessarily different. Just the messenger would be different, and that's not what we're talking about. It's not necessarily the messenger you need to change, but some part of the message. But again, as always, you can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. Stay tuned. Every day this week for the rest of the week, it's MLS Cup week. We have guests scheduled every single day to talk about our most favorite Cup game in North America. Kind of. Depends. Just Cup final is fun. But Saturday, we'll talk about it until Saturday. And until then, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.